Chapter 2 of Captain Bill McDonald, Texas Ranger, A Story of Frontier Reform. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Tom Marcotte. Captain Bill McDonald, Texas Ranger, A Story of Frontier Reform by Albert Bigelow Paine. Chapter 2. An old-time Mississippi childhood, the kind of an education for a young ranger, presence of mind early manifested. In those days, when the Mississippi planter was only something less than a feudal baron, with slaves and wide domain and vested rights, with horses, hounds, and the long chase after fox and good red deer, with horn and flagon and high home wassail in the hall. In those days was born William Jesse McDonald, September 28, 1852. His father, Enoch McDonald, was the planter of the feudal type, fearless, fond of the chase, the owner of wide acres and 100 slaves, while his grandfather, of the clan McDonald on its native heath, was a step nearer in the backward line to some old laird who led his men in roistering hunt or bloody fray amid the green hills and dim glens of Scotland. That was good blood, and from his mother, who was a Durham, Eunice Durham, the little chap that was one day to be a leader on his own account, inherited as clear a strain. The feudal hall in Mississippi, however, was a big old plantation house, built of hewn logs and riven boards, with woods and cotton fields on every hand, with cabins for the slaves and outbuildings of every sort. That was in Kemper County, over near the Alabama line, with DeKalb, the county seat, about 20 miles away. It was a peculiar childhood that little Bill Jess McDonald had. It was full of such things as the homecoming of the hunters with a deer or a fox, sometimes, and these were grand occasions, even with a bear. Then there were wonderful ball games played by the Bogue Cheetah and the Mucklelooshah Indians, exciting shooting matches and horse races, long fishing and swimming days with companions black and white, and the ever-recurring chase with the bloodhounds of some runaway slave. There was not much book schooling in a semi-barbaric childhood such as that. There was a schoolhouse, of course, which was used for a church and gatherings of any sort, and sometimes the children had lessons there. But the Kemper County teaching of that day was mainly to ride well, to shoot at sight, and to act quickly in the face of danger. That was the proper education for the boy who was one day to make the Texas Panhandle and No Man's Land his hunting ground, with men for his quarry. Presence of mind he had as a gift, and it was early manifested. There was a lake not far away where fishing and swimming went on almost continuously during the summer days, and sometimes the small swimmers would muddy the water near the shore and then catch the fish in their hands. They were doing this one day when Bill Jess was heard to announce excitedly, "I've got him, boys, I've got him. You can't beat mine," at the same instant swinging his catch high for them to see. That was a correct statement. They couldn't beat his catch, and they didn't want to. What they wanted to do was to get out of his neighborhood without any unnecessary delay, for the thing he held up to view was an immense deadly moccasin, grasped with both hands by the neck, the rest of it curling instantly around the lower arm. His hold was so tight and so near its head that the snake could not bite him, but the problem was to turn it loose. His friends were all ashore and at a safe distance. He did not lose his head, however, but wading ashore himself, he invited them one after another to unwind that snake. Nobody cared for the job, and he told them in turn and collectively what he thought of them. Then he offered the honor to a little slave boy on attractive terms. "Alec," he said, "if y'all don't come and unwind this here snake, I'll beat y'all to death and cut off your ears and skin you alive and give your carcass to the buzzards." Those were the days when a little slave boy could not resist an earnest entreaty of that sort from the son of the household, and Jim came forward, his face gray with gratitude, and taking hold gingerly, he unwound a yard or so of water moccasin from Bill Jess, who, with the last coil, flung his prize to the ground, where it was quickly killed, it being well nigh choked to death already. But even the great gift of presence of mind will sometimes balk at unfamiliar dangers. It was about this time that the Civil War broke out, and Enoch McDonald enlisted a company to defend the Southern cause. The little boy left behind was heartbroken. His father was his hero. And when by and by the news came that the soldiers were encamped at Meridian, a railway station about 50 miles distant, the lad made up his mind to join them. He set out alone afoot, and being used to finding his way in unfamiliar places, he made the journey with no great difficulty, eating and sleeping where opportunity afforded. He arrived at Meridian one morning, and began to look over the ground and to make a few inquiries as to his father's headquarters. There was a busy place where a lot of supplies were being unloaded from what appeared to be little houses on wheels. They were freight cars, but Bill Jess didn't know it. He had never seen a railroad before, and he followed along the track with increasing interest till he reached the engine, which he thought must be the most wonderful and beautiful thing ever created. Then suddenly it let off steam, the bell rang, and the air was split by a screaming whistle. It was too sudden and too strange for his gift to work. The son of all the McDonalds and of a gallant soldier set out for the horizon, never pausing until halted by the sentry of his father's camp. He was permitted to enter, and was directed to the drill ground, where his father, who had been promoted for bravery to the rank of major, was superintending certain maneuvers. The little boy, in his eagerness, ran directly into the midst of things, and Major McDonald, suddenly seeing him, was startled into the conclusion that some dire calamity had befallen his family, and only Bill Jess had escaped to tell the tale. Half sliding, half falling, he dropped from his horse to learn the truth. Then gratefully he lifted the lad up behind him, and continued the drill. Eunice McDonald was only a day or two behind Bill Jess, for her instinct told her where the boy had gone. They remained a few days in camp, and then bade their soldier good-bye. They never saw him again, for he was killed at the Battle of Corinth, October 3rd, 1862, charging a breastworks at the head of his regiment, his face to the enemy, as a soldier should die. Footnote: Colonel Rogers of Texas was killed in the same charge. Major McDonald and Colonel Rogers fell side by side within a few feet of the works. End of footnote. The boy, Bill Jess, 10 years old, went after his father's effects, which included 2 horses, both wounded. These he brought home, but his soldier father had been buried on the field, where he fell. End of chapter 2.